video describes our technique of doing collateral ligament reconstructions with Tenodesis anchors. We will first start with the technique of doing PLC reconstruction. A fluoroscopy is done to confirm opening laterally and the knee is positioned at 70 degrees flexion. A socket is made with a guide wire and then a 7.5 mm drill bit in the fibula. The Tenodesis anchor carrying the graft is tapped in. The same is repeated at the LCL insertion and popliteus insertion, but with a 7 mm drill bit and the graft passed through. This is the incision. This is the IT band. We first locate the common peroneal nerve after identifying the biceps femoris tendon and it's neuralized. The fibula is identified, a guide wire drilled through the fibula from anterolateral, and the Tenodesis anchor carrying the graft is tapped in after drilling it with a 7.5 mm drill bit as a socket for 20 mm. Now these are the two ends that come out from there. One end will be for the popliteus, other for the LCL. You trace the LCL along its insertion onto the femur. Another incision is made on the IT band, and the location of the LCL and about 14 mm away from it, the popliteus is marked. Then the ends of the graft are passed under the IT band to reach their insertion on the femur. Guide wires are drilled to the LCL and popliteus location and over drilled with a 7 mm drill bit for 20 millimeters. One end of the graft for the popliteus is loaded and tapped into its femoral insertion at 60 degrees flexion and a little valgus force. The same thing is done at the LCL location. The Tenodesis anchor is loaded with the graft and tapped into location at 30 degrees flexion with a valgus force. And this is the grafts you can see in there. There are extra threads from the anchors that can be used to stitch back the remainder portion of the graft. So nothing is wasted. This is done at the femoral end and the fibular end, and you can see a stable knee and the IT band closed. Coming to the MCL, this is an animation. You can see the MCL attachment on the femur. It is drilled with a guide wire and then over drilled with a 7.5 mm drill bit for 20 millimeters. The Tenodesis anchor with the graft is tapped into its location. The graft has one long end and short end. The short end is for the POL location, so 11.2 mm below the joint line posteromedially. A socket of 7 mm is made and the graft tapped into its location. Same thing is repeated 61.2 millimeters below the joint line and the superficial MCL part of the graft is tapped in. Now this is the fluoroscopy showing medial opening. Same position, 70 degrees flexion. The medial epicondyle is identified and sartorius fascia cut after seeing it on a C-arm. Once this is cut, the guide wire is drilled superior and posterior to the medial epicondyle. It's seen on a guide wire over drilled with a 7.5 mm drill bit for 20 millimeters. As you can see, once that's done, the graft is loaded on the Tenodesis anchor with one long and short end. You can see it here. That's been put in, the short end for the POL and the long end for the superficial MCL. This is tapped into the socket on the femur and the two ends of the thread are then tied over the graft. Now you make an incision from under the skin and sartorius fascia till the POL location, 11.2 millimeters below the joint line posteromedially, confirmed on a C-arm. Once this is done, it's over drilled with a 7 mm drill bit to 20 millimeters and the short end of the graft is then tapped into its location, as can be seen here. The threads are then tied for better security. Now you go to the superficial MCL location, 61.2 millimeters below the joint line anteromedially, drilled and over drilled with a 7 mm drill bit and the graft put into location with the Tenodesis anchor. And the sutures can be used to suture the leftover graft, as you can see here, and there's good stability at the end of the repair.